even as scientists are getting more concerned and people feel it's a growing crisis, sort of the American public is getting less concerned or understanding it less. There's a number of reasons for this. The first is that this is a very complicated story. There's feedback loops on top of feedback loops. There's from cows, volcanic eruptions, burping cows. I mean, all kinds of things put out gases into the air or affect the amount of sunlight hitting the Earth in ways that are really difficult to tease out and put together. A lot of this science is non-intuitive. You've probably heard of plans. Maybe you've paid to offset your carbon from your airplane, and they've said, we're going to plant 2 trees in Norway. Well, it turns out that if you take a snowy field in Norway and turn it into a pine forest, it's a lot darker than the snow, and that pine forest is going to absorb sunlight, and that's going to heat the Earth. So, you know, for everything every way we try to help, you know, things hurt, and these are hard messages to get across. You've probably all heard about the melting glaciers and seen these dramatic pictures from the Sierras, from what formerly known as Glacier National Park. But there's also glaciers that are growing because precipitation patterns change. At Mount Shasta, the glaciers are actually growing because as the climate warms and atmospheric patterns change, precipitation patterns change, and some areas are getting more rain. So to try to convey this to a public is difficult, and when we also see from polls that 20% of Americans think that the sun revolves around the Earth. So it's a problem if you can't even get that right to understand what these guys are.
Nobody here thinks that.
Right, not you guys, not you, of course. The good news in Los Angeles is I think we have a very sophisticated audience to understand these things. We understand risk and uncertainty. We understand thinking out over long time scales of decades or centuries, and that's because we've grown up with earthquakes. And the physics of earthquakes are probably one of the few things that's as complex as the climate system. So I think this is a good place to understand climate. I think we should. There's another important reason that we should and will understand the changing climate. We live on the edge of habitability here. We've got too many people crammed into a region that really doesn't have enough water to support itself. And we are going to be among the first to notice these changes as the planet changes. More days over 100 degrees in August, so we'll notice that, right? Increased water restrictions, lowered reservoirs, we'll notice that. More wildfires, I think all of us who saw the station fire, we know we're going to notice that. So we're on the front lines, I think, of this rapidly changing climate here, and whether we like it or not, we've got front row seats. The second reason this is hard to convey is psychological. When you hear about globally what could happen, famine in Africa and drought and increased disease rates, it's horrifying and it's hard to take in. And I think a very popular response is denial or hopelessness. I've interviewed more than one climate scientist who has sort of told me all about climate, and I've closed my notebook, and then they said, actually it's worse than I just said. I'm just scared to say it because I don't want people to, throw up their hands and give up. And so that's disturbing, right? If the experts can't even think about how to describe the problems because they're so big. Again, I think in Los Angeles, we deal with this denial. We've got housing tracts across the San Andreas Fault, and at the same time, we are seeing more and more people put together earthquake kits and think about making emergency plans. So, behavior can change. So I think just as we've gotten some grip on pollution and gotten some grip on how to live with earthquake danger, I think we're, in this region, going to be ahead of others in terms of dealing with climate. The third reason is political. It's clear, and much investigative reporting has confirmed this, that special interests, particularly the oil and coal industry, have spent tens of millions of dollars to put up false fronts and pay scientists to equivocate and obfuscate the climate issue. You've heard of them, I've got a list here, the Heritage Foundation, the American Enterprise Institute. They're really fronts for ExxonMobil. My favorite, the Cooler Heads Coalition. They do have good marketing. They've grown increasingly sophisticated in their campaign. 10 years ago it was, climate change is not happening. And then it was, okay, maybe the Earth is warming, but it's not humans. It's natural. It's the sun is getting stronger. And then it became, well, maybe humans are causing some of this climate change, but it's not that bad. People like wine growers in Canada, people are going to benefit from this. It's a trade-off. And then now, if you follow the climate blogs, you've seen that 1998 was the hottest year on record, and we've got hotter years, but the extreme warming that we saw in the 90s has kind of leveled off, which scientists believe is part of the natural variability of the Earth's climate. But now it's they're really back to it's not happening. The Earth it's not warming anymore, so it's cooled down. So I think that I think we have to worry about the climate story being hijacked. And it's not only from the right, it's from the left as well. I think you've all seen the photos of the polar bears kind of stranded on the ice, and their ice is melting and they're all going extinct. And the scientists who advise the Canadian government on endangered species, they've got 60% of the world's polar bears up there, and it's clear they're not it's of course a concern if ice is vanishing and where the polar bears live and get their food, but they're not in danger of extinction. They're more in danger actually from pollution and the mercury in the fish they eat, and the hunting from the Inuits are still allowed to hunt polar bears. So I realize every movement needs a mascot, but it's a sort of a disservice to overblow a story, and then it washes back on the climate deniers, say, oh, polar bears are fine, there's nothing to worry about, there's no global warming.